Hunting or Bust, The Journey Onward by Master Atlan, Chapter 41, The Beast Within the Beauty. The Faunus Noble Guard, you'll hear people call it the Majesties of Menagerie, but that's not the real title. This is, the soft voice cleared his throat before speaking. A long time ago, when people were still new and finding sanctuary from the darkness, the Grim continued to reap the masses. Even together, people had a difficulty combining the threat of the monsters, but it was even worse while they were divided. Humans started finding refuge and building settlements to protect themselves, but the Faunus had to defend themselves, and poorly, as it seemed. Until one day, a group of Faunus gathered together to fight back, and trained through the experience of fighting the Grim, they were able to protect the Faunus long enough for them to create a settlement of their own. They were praised and loved by all Faunus, and anointed as the guardians that would protect them through every hardship they might face. They accepted that task without pause, but the Grim grew fiercer, stronger, larger in number. The Noble Guard could no longer protect the masses from the oncoming Grim. Things were bleak, and hope seemed lost until the guards changed. They may have sold their souls, they may have succumbed to their inner demons, they may have eaten the flesh of the Grim and taken their form, but the Noble Guards had changed. Suddenly, their bodies were clad in cloaks of different colors, and they changed into beasts themselves. At first, the other Faunus were scared of them, but soon they realized what their guardians had done. They sacrificed what they were to protect them against the great evil, and they were accepted despite the change. Those Noble Guards protected the Faunus so well into the period where people started to recognize history. The Noble Guards disappeared, but the legends of their heroics preserved through the ages, so that we may never, she gasped, looking back and down before laughing. "Hey, mister, did you hear anything I said?" The little blonde fox, sleeping against her bushy red tail, stirred from his catnap. He sat up, blinking and rubbing his eyes as he stifled his yawn. "Sorry, Mom, I'm just a little sleepy." His mother gave him a disapproving look. You weren't up all night watching old tournament footage again, were you?" "No, ma'am," he replied unconvincingly as his ears twitched on his head. She hummed before crossing her arms. "So it was just my boring story?" "No," the young child desperately tried to save himself. "I'm just tired. It's cold and your tail is warm, and I just felt sleepy." "Well, it helps that you're wearing your jacket." She fixed his outfit before tapping his nose. "You need to stay bundled up. It's getting cold and you aren't gonna be using my tail as a pillow all the time, okay?" "Okay. Oh, come here." She couldn't stay mad at him. She pulled him in for a quick hug before he sat in her lap, and they looked up together, his back settled against her as they watched the calm gray skies. They weren't gonna get a chance to use their backyard like this for much longer, so while Dad was away, they sat together and enjoyed the tranquility. "What's Mistral like?" "I don't know. I've lived in Vale most of my life, and before that I was in Backville, so I guess you and me will find out together. But before that, we're gonna stop over on an island called Patch." "Patch?" "Uh-huh. All of our stuff is gonna get collected and carried over to Mr. ahead of us, and then when it arrives, we'll make the next trip over." "Oh, are you excited?" "Yep. You don't sound excited." "Well, 'cause we're probably gonna move again sometime after that too, right? We usually do." She was silent. She must have been thinking about what he said. He hoped he wasn't in trouble. "Naruto?" "Yeah. Do you ever wish you were human, like Daddy?" Naruto thought with a hum. "Well, I don't think it would be very different, because I just not have my ears, right?" He thought a little harder before shaking his head. "No, I like being a Faunus." He smiled. "Because I'm already like you, right, Mom?" He felt her arm squeeze a little tighter around his neck, and she leaned up against his head. "Mom?" "Yes, sweetie, I like that we're the same too." She sounded weird, but he nodded and smiled. "Okay. Naruto? I'm sorry." He woke up just like he had every night since the hospital. It wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't in a panic. He didn't wake up screaming or crying. The dream ended and he woke up. It was the same dream, or at least pretty damn close, because they all ended the same, all the time with her, and she said the same thing. How many times had she said that, and he never even realized it? He sat up in his bed and looked around the room. Sasuke, Tente, and Kiba were all still sound asleep, since the alarm hadn't even gone off yet, and the room was in a mix of dark and light. That period when even the sun hadn't popped out properly. He was awake and he already knew he wasn't gonna fall back asleep. Might as well go for a run before the last day starts. Help clear his mind. Hunting. Oh, it's just so beautiful, isn't it? The Schneehairs looked like she was on cloud nine, light on her feet and an unmistakable giddiness in her voice. While they walked through the streets of El, at any moment she looked like she would start skipping and singing a pleasant tune with birds and other woodland critters flocking around her. It was out of character and really, really unnerving now that they thought about it. Weiss, you're so happy. You've never been this happy. Ruby cowered. Is something wrong? And do you have bad news? Are dogs and cats gonna start living together? I can promise they won't, Blake added. No, you dunce. Why snapped at her as Ruby was torn between fear and relief at her familiar behavior. I'm just enjoying the sight of the Vita Festival preparations. They looked over the street at the numerous signs in store windows and the banner being strung up between buildings that said, Welcome to Vale. Why swooned. Oh, it's absolutely breathtaking. All the cultures that's going to flow through these streets. The camaraderie between kingdoms, all this planning and organization, it's just so wonderful. Wow, Yang deadpanned and rolled her eyes. Didn't think there was any way to ruin the festival for me. Congrats, Weiss. You did it by releasing your inner nerd. Hush. Weiss frowned. I'm trying to take it all in. Yeah, lighten up, Yang. Ruby bounced up to her sister. We should be happy. Look how much Weiss is smiling. This has to be the most she smiled since. This time Ruby was cut off when both Yang and Blake clamped a hand over her mouth. Their leader's eyes widened as she realized what she was going to say and groaned, wanting to kick herself in the butt. All three of them looked to see Weiss was too focused on their surroundings to hear them as they let out a collective sigh. Yang collected herself and stepped up. Okay, so other than getting some fresh air, any reason we're walking around the city today of all days? Well, the students for Reggio are arriving by boat today. Weiss attempted to sound neutral, and her inner mastermind bleed through. I believe as esteemed students of Beacon, it is our duty to go greet them and help ease their transition into Vale. Translation, Blake helped. All of our opponents are arriving and she wants to spy on them to get the upper hand. Quiet you. And so we came all the way to the docks, the place where all the breeze and salty air messes up my hair, just so you can creep on the competition. I didn't say that, Weiss defended herself. If that's how you wish to interpret it, then that's your problem. If my hair puffs up and gets frizzy, it's gonna be everyone's problem. There are easier ways to do this, Weiss. Blake offered up with an amused laugh. Why don't we just poison their food to slow them down, or lock them up in their dorms? We could get them lost, Ruby innocently offered up. Would that work? Weiss silently turned to face them and pulled out her lips with like a zipper. The glare that followed only intimidated Ruby, but the other two decided to stop since they got their licks in. The four girls kept making their way down the street until they caught sight of the pier, but before they reached the docks, they noticed a gathering of people and police cars around the storefront. They walked over to see what was happening and quickly realized the problem. The window was shattered into pieces that covered the sidewalk, police tape covering the shop, and there were signs of damage on the inside. Detectives on site while the officers kept civilians out. Wow. Hey, Ruby came up to the border of the scene and got the attention of one officer. What happened here? Robbery. He didn't seem to pay much attention to them as he was more focused on stopping people from snatching any photos. Please move along. This is an active crime scene. God, Yang looked at the scene. That is just awful. And once again, they left all the cash. The Beacon students overheard what one detective said to the other as they looked in through the shattered windows. Small miracles, I guess. Although that would be a lot more comforting if this wasn't the second time this has happened in a week. All these robberies be all the dust gone and no money stolen. One of the detectives let out a heavy sigh and scratched his head. Who the hell needs that much dust? Could be someone is stocking up for a turf war. You think it's gonna be more fallout from Wilkes' vacuum? Don't even bring it up. The detective groaned. I'm still getting crap from the chief after he escaped on our watch, just to get killed by some other gang across town. Does he threaten to hang you by your toes too? More like silently drag his finger across his throat before pointing at me. But at least he ain't verbal with you. So who do we think? One offered aimlessly while examining the scene again. White Fang. Don't know why they'd get involved, but you can't deny how active they've been lately. His shoulders sagged before walking off. If the White Fangs are actually getting involved, then it's about to hit the fan. And that's saying something when with all the stuff that normally happens here, more stuff can hit the fan. The White Fang. Ruby and Yang shared a look before turning back to look at their teammate. Weiss's eyes had narrowed into a very contemptuous glare that actually worried the sisters greatly. She noticed their expression and huffed before turning away. The White Fang. No surprise there. She walked off. Criminals just being criminals, committing evil deeds when they can. Her voice was very low, saying that as they followed him. No surprise there. Weiss. They're not all criminals. They all stopped and looked back at Blake in surprise. The bow-wearing girl was standing firmly in place with an unflinching look in her eyes. Weiss turned back to face her. And what is that supposed to mean? I mean, not all White Fang members are evil. Some of them are just misunderstood. Misunderstood? Why scoffed, which ticked Blake off more than she showed. Is that what we're calling it now? Terrorizing people and trying to kill all humans is just labeled as misguided, huh? They don't want to kill all humans, Blake retorted with bite in her voice. They just want equality for fairness. They have a funny way of doing it. Okay, that's enough. Yang got between them and immediately felt the glare they were exchanging send a chill through her back. Look, the cops weren't sure who did this. Maybe the White Fang had nothing to do with it at all. That's right. Ruby came to Yang's aid and tried to quell the tension growing between them. Do you guys remember that jerk I fought before coming to Beacon? Torchwick or something? Maybe he had something to do with this. Ruby's expression fell and she cupped her chin and thought, what if he did? Yeah, see, that could be the reason. Yang pulled them back into the focus with an easy chuckle. So, let's not worry about the robbery now, okay? This has gone a little further than just the robbery. A terse discussion came to an abrupt halt as several horns echoed through the streets. The Beacon students remembered why they came down in the first place and made a quick run for the pier. They came to a stop at the railing and looked out over the docks. Whoa, Ruby smiled. Awesome. Hundreds of students were fleeing out of the boats and up into the streets. A sea of their colors, skin tone, and different clothes formed together into one big flood of people coming out the docks. There are more than that I thought, Weiss noted in astonishment. Yang squinted her eyes. No one's in uniform. What's that about them? She doesn't have uniforms, Blake helpfully stated as she continued watching the vacuum arrivals. Wow, Ruby stumbled back as she was shaken from excitement, or was she shaken from nervousness? Either way, she was shaken. She took a moment to catch her breath and watched them pass down the street. So this is the city of Ville. It is truly a glorious place to hold such a wonderful experience like the Vita Festival. As commemoration, how about we stretch our legs and run around the city for a few hours? Okay, champ, slow down. We just got off the boat, so at least take a second to breathe. I can't do that. As upperclassmen, it's our duty to show our underclassmen we can take this new city by storm. As upperclassmen, we shouldn't look like idiots in front of the underclassmen by running around like headless chicken. Oh, that was an older team from Shade. They may have been older, but they acted like a real team. That was so cool. That excited one in the front, the two following him and trying to calm him down, and the one more trailing behind, one with red hair and little ears sticking out from the follicles. Huh? She wasn't sure why, but there was something about the last member. He sort of felt kind of like, and they must have noticed Ruby's gaze because they turned around to look back at her. Get that, Faunus! Everyone's attention turned back to see a commotion happening on one of the boats. Sailors were gathering around before a figure leapt off the boat and landed on top of a light post. Sorry about that. The young Faunus on the fixture apologized with a grin and waved off his hand. He had spiky blonde hair and a monkey tail sticking out from his lower back. His skin was a fair tan and the shirt he wore was open to reveal his well-defined chest. A tail reached into his back pocket and plucked out a banana before dropping it into his hand. And sorry about the bananas. You guys should bring more supplies next time. I almost starved. You ate a whole box of them, you stupid stowaway. Stupid stowaway. He looked back until he was hanging from the light post by his tail while snacking on the fruity treat. I was apparently smart enough to evade you guys. What's that say about you? That got a few laughs out of the gathering crowd. The detectives came down to the pier and walked out to confront the monkey. Okay, kid, enough fun and games. Drop the banana and get down here. He followed their demands in the loosest and most rebellious way possible, but technically he still followed them. The banana peel dropped and slammed straight in the middle of one of the detectives' face, and he jumped down to land behind them before darting down the pier. Sorry, but I didn't come along just to see the inside of a cell. I got places to be. The crowd naturally started cheering while watching the monkey Faunus run from the cops. He passed a few of them, sharing high fives and waves of support before making his way further down the street and finally passing Team Ruby. He turned to look at her for just a moment. He smiled and winked before sprinting past like a wild animal. The cops called out, passing them as well as they gave chase. Should we follow them? Quickly, Weiss announced as she started running. We must follow. The rest of Team Ruby suddenly sprinting over to follow their friend as they chased that Faunus and the cops. They lost sight of them around some corner, having to rely on sound instead. And when the sound faded, they had to rely on instinct. And when instinct pushed them forward, Weiss finally ended up running into someone in the street. The Harris crashed into someone as they fell into a heap on the sidewalk. She heard the others came to a halt behind her as she looked around for the target. Nothing. They got away. We'll never find them. Weiss? Weiss finally realized what had happened and looked down at the freckled, smiling face a mere inches away from hers. Weiss leapt up like a frightened cat and stumbled back into her team. Salutations! The strange girl greeted them from the ground with a small smile on her face. She had curly orange hair coming around her head and a pink bow tied behind it. Her green and black blouse mixed with overalls and a pair of stockings going up her skirt. She continued to smile and wave up at the girl standing over her. It is very nice to meet you. Team Ruby shared looks of bewilderment before Ruby spoke. Hi. It is such a beautiful day, don't you think? Yeah, hey, Yang pointed down. Are you gonna get up at all, or what? Oh yes, I suppose I shall. She leaped back up on her feet and faced the girls with another smile. Oh, allow me to introduce myself. She gleefully remembered and smiled. My name is Penny. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. Hi Penny. Ruby stepped forward. My name is Ruby. I'm Weiss. Blake. Like, did something crack when you fell over or elbow to the rib? Right, Yang, sorry. Well, it's a pleasure to meet all of you. As I said, there was an upbeat, almost sickening sweet enjoyment in every word she said, like she took honest joy from even getting to experience this uncomfortable awkwardness between them all right now. Weiss took noticeable discomfort with her peppy attitude and leaned towards Yang. You might be onto something with her hitting her head. And she just, ow. Weiss, Ruby turned to her partner in worry when she saw the Harris rub her arm gingerly. Are you okay? I'm fine. That collision just hurt more than I expected. Weiss arched an eyebrow at the odd girl. You're surprisingly sturdy for such a thin girl. Are you made of metal or something? What? No. Don't be silly. That's such a strange joke. So unconventional and quirky, but very funny. A real gutbuster. Oh, what social camaraderie. You truly are a jester. Ha 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 ha. Okay, after that very unnerving little outburst, Team Ruby slowly started to step back, deciding to continue their chase by taking the scenic route. Sorry, Penny, but we've got to get going, Ruby explained before waving goodbye. We'll see you later, okay? Penny blinked and tilted her head curiously. When they rounded the corner, there was a collective sigh of relief, while she shook her head. What a weirdo. Yeah, definitely a screw loose. Yang nodded. I mean, if she thinks you're a jokester, then she'll probably need a whole toolbox to fix her problems. Hey, what did you say? Ruby stopped in horror when they saw Penny standing in front of them now, most of them wondering how she cut them off without them noticing. As Yang backtracked, oh god, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for you to hear that. I probably shouldn't have said. No, not you. Penny weaved between them until she was standing in front of Ruby, the shorter girl leaning away out of fear before the new girl asked them, what did you say earlier? What do you mean? That you would see me later? Penny repeated with some honest intrigue as she leaned in closer. Meeting up with someone in the future implies further social engagement. Future social engagement implies comfortability and possible friendship. Well, that was a reach. Does that mean you want to be friends with me? And Penny looked like an excited child as she took Ruby's hands. Can we be friends? Her team's message seemed clear. There was a lot of head shaking, crossing of arms, mouthing words, and even the surprise grin, the surprise sign that said no in big red letters. But her eyes, oh no, was this the puppy dog eyes? Were they finally coming back to bite her after years of prolonged use against her better judgment? Sure. Ruby nodded as her team toppled over. We can be friends. This is sensational. Penny started jumping with joy as Ruby joined in, mostly because her hands were still locked in the excited girl's grip. When she finally let go, Penny was shaking with glee. Oh, this is going to be so much fun. I can't wait to do all the normal girl things with my new friend. Blake clarified. Singular. Weiss noted. Yang pushed Ruby forward into Penny's sight. Can you believe it, Ruby? And Penny asked her with a huge smile. We'll paint our nails. We try on cute clothes. We'll talk about cute boys. While Ruby was still experiencing buyer's remorse on this new friendship, she had to admit it was nice to hear someone suggest doing all the things she thought about to make friends. Really? Oh yes. However, I don't know how to paint nails. And I don't know how well I can choose clothes, and I don't know many boys, so I'll be relying on you for most of that input. Oh yay! Ruby looked back and wordlessly pleaded for someone's help to buffer. Her beloved older sister mustered a sigh before stepping forward. So, Penny, what you doing around here, new to the city? Oh yes, I'm quite new, the odd girl enthusiastically answered, especially considering I just came from the Vital Festival tournament. That got their attention. They looked at her in shock. You're coming for the tournament? Absolutely. She saluted with her smile never ceasing for an instant. I'm combat ready. I'm honestly surprised. Weiss looked her over. Forgive me, but besides your surprisingly strong stance and core, you do not look the part of a fighter. Looks can be deceiving. Blake shrugged. I mean, you're wearing a dress. It's a combat skirt. Yeah. High five. Blake and Yang shared the look before the blonde asked. So, are you coming in from Vacuo too? No, the orange-haired girl politely replied. I'm arriving here ahead of time from Atlas. Really? Weiss perked up and seemed to abandon the bubble of space she had formed between her and the strange girl. You're from Atlas as well? Yep, Penny nodded happily. Made and raised them. It's born and raised them. That too. Well, then, as two Atlesian girls, it's our duty to help each other out when we can. Weiss easily convinced the gullible girl like a puppeteer pulling the strings. You agree, right? That makes sense to me. Good. Weiss looked at Penny in the eyes and requested, Did you see two officers come through here a moment ago? They were most likely chasing a degenerate faunus. Degenerate? Yes. Weiss nodded. Tall, had a tail, probably reeked of bananas, and whatever swarms around in the underbelly of society. Did you see him? What was that? The Harris looked back at Blake to see the peeved look in her eyes while glaring at her. What? I'm trying to see if she saw him. You called him a degenerate? Blake repeated before looking too annoyed by her choice of words. Why would you call him something like that? Maybe because he is a degenerate or a delinquent ruffian. Weiss elaborated. I can go on. Don't. Why would you just label him like that? Label? Did you not see the same thing I did? Him legally hiding away on a ship for a free ride here. Is that not an act of a criminal? It doesn't have to be malicious. What if he just couldn't afford a ticket to come over here and could only hide away on a ship? Did you ever consider that? Oh yes, and I'm sure the mocking, stealing food and running away from the police were also a part of some little tragic story too, which is maybe a blatant disregard for the law and order. Just watch it. He'll probably commit a few more little discrepancies, sneak around and get some extra cash, and then head back to be a part of the White Fang soon enough. Oh, Weiss. And what does that mean? And that it doesn't make much of doesn't take much of anything to turn a faunus into a criminal. Blake, well, it certainly doesn't seem like they try that hard to avoid that outcome. I can't believe you. Blake blew up her arms and stomped off. You are such an insensitive, insolent child. How dare you? Weiss slammed her boots into the ground as she marched over to match Blake's gait. I am your teammate, and a spoiled, judgmental brat as well. Weiss's gasp and followed up caused their argument to rocket out of control. Ruby and Yang watched sadly as their partners' dispute started to escalate. The siblings shared a concerned glance before looking back at their friend. This isn't going to end well. Hunting. The city was nice and quiet. That was definitely a plus. His head felt cluttered enough without the booming volume of kids celebrating the end of the semester. He should have been celebrating too. The first semester was done. Finals were all over. He was mostly sure he got good grades on his exams, and he was visiting his father for the next 2-week break, and yet he felt the same as he did the entire week. Not angry or upset, just there was a term from the exam that defined this. NUI, Austin, whatever. Point was, he wasn't enjoying the fact that the last week like he should. The tension between their team wasn't angry or violent, but it was just there. They still talked, conversed like normal when they needed to, but more often than not, they just sat together in silence. He noticed Tintin looked drained every now and then. Kiba was more silent about the matter than he expected him to be, and Sasuke was still in his slumber. It wasn't supposed to be how they left things off. Naruto sighed, shaking his head and remembering he was taking this walk to clear his mind. Came down to simple walk to get a few tasty bowls of ramen before enjoying the day. Oh man, spoke too soon. Naruto looked back to see a monkey fondness around the corner and come running towards him. The stranger noticed him and dug his feet into the ground to come to a halt. The blonde monkey looked around desperately. Oh man, and they are way faster than I gave them credit. The monkey finally noticed Naruto standing by him. Oh, hey man. Hi. Where is he? The monkey looked back before saying, sneaking on a boat was definitely not the best idea. Neptune's gonna chew my ear off. Hey man, he got Naruto's snitch before running the corner. I went this way, alright? Tell them that. What the? Hey you! Naruto turned back to see two detectives run up to him. They stopped and gasped for breath before struggling through. Have you seen a kid come through here, Faunus? Open shirt. Naruto silently pointed in the direction the monkey had run, and the cops thanked him before resuming their chase. Thanks, man. The monkey slipped out from the alley and let out a sigh of relief now that he wasn't being chased. Those guys were relentless. And why were they chasing you? Naruto felt compelled to ask. Depending on the answer, he might have to get ready for a fight. Oh, a huge misunderstanding. The other fawn groaned before pointing back the way he came. I snuck on a boat from Vacuo to come here. I'm here for the festival, and I thought it would be fun if I came early, but I was not ready for the whole trip stuck in a boat storage. I mean, like I ate a ton of their supplies, of their water. I snatched blankets from the cart and used the bathroom when they were out. It was a huge mess. Wait, Naruto quirked an eyebrow. Why did you sneak on? Shouldn't you have just come over like the rest of the students? I can't. I'm not from Shade. I'm from Haven. He stuck out his chest and pounded it with a fist full of pride. So, why is the Haven student sneaking on a boat with Shade students? I mean, maybe the map changed, but last I checked, aren't you guys really, really far apart? I was visiting family, he clarified while stretching out his muscles. There was an opportunity to come see this place ahead of time, and I took it. So you're from Mistral, visiting family in Vacuo, saw the Shade kids were coming over on a boat, thought it was a good idea to sneak on and arrive days ahead of Haven, but then realized hiding in the storage of a boat sucked, and then the moment you arrived, you pissed off the cops. Yeah, pretty much sums it up. He was silent before laughing and shrugging his shoulders. And that's why I'm not my team's strategist. His stomach started to rumble. Hey, do you know any good places to eat around here? I'm starving. Not to look at him with a dry expression before the bandana wearing boy sighed. There's a diner 2 streets over that has some pretty good food. A cafe a few blocks over. And I just came back from a noodle place over there. It's small, but the bowls are delicious. Sweet, thanks, man. Faunus has got to stick together, right? He didn't notice Naruto surprised as he held out his fist. Nim-san. The fox looked at the monkey in absolute bewilderment. His bandana was still around his head and he was sure no one could see his ears. But this guy, Naruto sighed, giving up on trying to think it through and just knocked his fist. Naruto. Cool. Thanks for the help, Naruto. Sun dashed past him and down the street to get some food. Naruto decided his walk was probably done and just started making his way back to the transport. Time to head back to Beacon. Wait, I don't know where I'm staying either. I really should have thought this through. Hunting. Naruto made his way down the hall as a yawn slipped out. He smacked his lips and spotted his dorm room. He reached out to open. You're admitting it? You're admitting that the White Fang are terrorists? I said their leaders are aiming to terrorize people. I didn't say it like all of them can be considered terrorists. And you know I didn't. Blake, and was she arguing with Weiss? Hunting. It's baffling to me that you of all people can be this blind. Weiss babbled as she attempted to wrap her mind around how this argument was still persistent. You're smart, probably even more knowledgeable about political situations than I am. So how can you look me in the eyes and tell me the White Fang are not a terrorist organization after everything they've done? Because I know the reasons they do what they do. Blake's voice sharp and loud to match Weiss's. Fairness, equality, the terrible conditions some of them have to work in just to live their daily lives, the treatment they get in places around the world. They're making sure Fairness aren't treated like second-class citizens. Weiss and Ruby were both sidelining during the argument. They had long since realized it was futile to engage in the conversation and try to act as mediators. They sat down and watched, hoping the argument wouldn't escalate too far, and flinch whenever their partner screamed. Don't paint them like freedom fighters, like heroes. Weiss yelled with distaste at how Blake was imagining them. They're not doing this for the benefit of anyone. Making people afraid and miserable isn't the answer to equality. They aren't heroes by any definition of the word. They're pure evil. This time it was Blake's turn to look at Weiss patronizingly as she shook her head. No one is pure evil. People have reason for doing what they do to motivate them. Even the White Fang have a reason, even if you can't understand it. That's not an excuse. Weiss's pale face was going red with anger. Having a cause doesn't excuse the horrible things they've done. At least we can understand that much. Who? Blake asked as the others looked at Weiss questioningly. The Harris seemed to reel back from the look she was getting before it hit Blake. Did you talk with Naruto? They looked at Weiss in shock and even more surprised as she didn't deny it. What did you say to him? Weiss took a sharp breath. I told him I didn't want to speak with him again. What? Weiss? Of course you would come to that decision. Did you decide you never wanted to talk to him after you found out he was a faunus? Blake started to bristle with anger as she startled again. Do you honestly believe Naruto is pure evil? Well, at least he understands that there isn't an excuse for hurting people like that. Weiss tried to keep her ground. So are you going to start talking to Sasuke as well? Do Uchiha kidnapped and attacked us as well? Hurt us? Or are you going to give him a pass because he's human? Before you decide who to judge and who you believe be evil, you should try to understand them. Weiss was silent after Blake's last point as the others looked at her, but instead of the anger, huff, or retort they were expected, the hair slowly narrowed her eyes. Her icy blue eyes still over. No, I can't. She shook her head. I'm sorry if you can sympathize with Faunus and White Fang, then I suppose you're better than I am, because I can't, and I won't. Her voice was reserved compared to her furious yelling a moment ago, but the others noticed the edge and bitterness in her tone. Weiss glared down. 5 years, that's how long it's been since the White Fang changed their way of finding peace. Her meaning was clear to them even as her eyes remained focused on the floor. In the beginning, they demanded attention. They made themselves known and heard. They stole shipment of our dust, forced everyone that worked at our sites to leave while they ransacked it. They stole entire trains to take the dust or give it away. I don't know what they did, but it got the SDC's attention. I never stopped hearing about how angry the people around me were. It never stopped. Weiss clenched her fist and gritted her teeth, and then it just got worse. The managers and supervisors that used to be released were captured and turned into examples. The trains were no longer being hijacked, but just destroyed with bombs or broken rails. Members of our board started to disappear. People I knew just disappeared without a trace. Blood was being shed. I saw people I recognized disappear, and unfortunately, I was old enough to realize what had happened to them. She turned around to face the window as she looked back up. My father was furious. Sometimes I wouldn't see him for so long that the time I did all blurred into one long outrage. It was very, very difficult to grow up with that realization. The rest of Team Ruby listened to her story with their shock clear on their face. Blake blinked, loosening her voice as she saw Ruby and Yang share a look of concern. Ruby stepped forward. Weiss, but it wasn't enough. They hadn't gotten back at the SDC yet. They hadn't made any father regret. They hadn't made my father regret everything he had ever done. They wanted to make it personal, so they aimed at his daughters. Her shoulders hiccuped up as her voice started shaking. My sister just took them in stride. I don't know how she could be strong, but she pushed on. Had better things to do, but me, I was scared. Hearing them scream my name out in hatred, threatening to make me suffer all the pains and indignation they had to live through, very details of how they would hurt me and leave the remains on the steps of the DC, so my body would be the first thing my father sees before going to work. Her shoulders stopped shaking and her voice had a small crack in it. You like scary stories, right? Remind me to tell you about the details they go into about hurting me. It can leave you sleepless at night, believe me. Oh God, she didn't know all that, but that didn't. Weiss, Ruby stepped forward, a hatred in her voice as she was terrified to hear that her partner endured just because of her name. I didn't. Well, that's the truth. They jerked back when she spun around, tears springing in her eyes as she glared at Blake. That's why I hate the White Fang, because I know what they're really like. No, that wasn't true. They didn't cheat. They'll lie to convince themselves they're doing the right thing just so they can feel better when they murder and torture people. No, that wasn't her, and she knew they weren't all like that, and she was just here because that's why I have a hard time trusting Faunus who act like that boy did, because he would just because another person just like them if he continued, and that's why I can't trust Naruto, because no matter how sorry he is, I still imagine him being a part of the people that want to kill me. He wasn't, at least she thought he wasn't. They weren't, so that's how. A tear came down before she yelled. That's how I know that the White Fang are pure evil. Well, what choice did we have but to fight back? Wait, she didn't. Did she just yell that? Blake looked back up to see Weiss staring at her in shock. Her heart started to pound harder before she looked over to see Ruby and Yang stare at her the same way. No, don't look at her like that. She wasn't a part of it anymore. That wasn't her. But then why did she say that? Her mind started to spin. Her breathing started to become raspy. She dashed out the door. Blake, wait. She heard Ruby call out to her, but she ignored her. She ran through the hall to the dorm. Her legs carried her as fast as far as she could go in one quick burst. She wasn't sure if she was being followed because she couldn't think straight. She just had to run. Before she knew it, she was outside. Her legs failed her as she came to a slow stop and held her knees to catch her breath. Even if she wasn't exhausted, her heart was beating so rapidly she desperately needed to breathe. She swallowed the lump in her throat before standing back up at the courtyard. She had run so fast out of the dorm, she ended up in front of the school. She looked around the courtyard before her eyes fell on the statue that proudly stood outside the entrance. The black-clad fauness started making her way over without even thinking about it. She stopped in front of it and looked at the strong figures over a man and a woman standing on top of a raised platform, weapons in hand, and a proud, unwavering form that did not falter before any challenge. Huntsmen, and huntresses, like heroes and models for all ages before they ever had a label. No matter what your race, your position, or where you were born, this was the dream of so many people. And right beneath them was a monster being crushed by a slab of rock, a Beowulf. It was the symbol of evil of the world, the grim, their constant enemies. It was obvious. So why was it when she looked at the statue, she felt sad, like she knew where she stood in that statue, and it wasn't basking in the light of glory and honor? Weiss's words rang fresh in her mind, everything she said still bouncing around with such ferocity. She wasn't a part of it anymore. She had left the White Fang so long, so why did she feel the need to defend it like that? Didn't she leave because she didn't like their methods anymore? How they were starting to change? So why did she argue like that? Maybe because when Weiss said those things, that she imagined herself being the worst of them. All those years she spent with them, good and bad, and all she had to show for it was fear and regret, and that she was still. Her hands drifted up to her head and grabbed the strings of her ribbon. She slowly started to pull them apart before her ribbon laid across her palm. She looked back up at the statue as her ears twitched before being freed from the confinement. She had been looking forward to the day she could remove her bow at Beacon. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. So that's how they look like. Blake flinched and spun around in a panic when she heard the voices behind her. Naruto, of all people, was standing just a few feet behind her. She caught her breath, covering her heart in relief before looking back up at him. "What are you doing here?" "Sorry, I overheard you guys." Her eyes widened as Naruto looked around nervously. "When Weiss came to see me, I tried to tell her to give Faunus a chance. I thought it would help when if you were going to tell them, but now..." Blake bit her lip in anger before looking back at him. "What are you doing here, Naruto?" The fox didn't answer her as he slowly walked towards her. Blake tensed up, her mind racing through all the possibilities. She wasn't thinking clearly, expecting just about any course of action, that he might even try to attack or course her mind. "I'm sorry." Naruto hugged her as Blake went stiff in his embrace. The black-clad girl was stung by this action and looked at him while still in his arms. "I'm so sorry, Naruto." Blake started squirming in his hold as she was uncomfortable with the close contact. "What are you doing? There isn't time for this." She shook. I have to." Blake slowly came to a stop and quit thrashing around in his hug. Naruto felt the usual cool girl tremble as he could faintly hear a sniffle and a stifle sob. He knew she probably didn't want to be seen in this now, not after what just happened with her team. So she didn't separate so she could keep her face hidden. Her arms refused to raise from her side, but she took the chance to rest on his shoulder while she cried. After a few moments, he felt her stop shaking. He stepped back and saw Blake cover her face, wiping her eyes and trying to calm herself down while catching her breath. After she finished, her hands fell, and she looked up at him. Her eyes clearly red from the tears and rubbing before she spoke again. "I have to go." "Go where?" "I don't know." She walked past him and started tying the bow back on her head. "But I can't stay here." Naruto followed her. "Well, where are you gonna go?" Blake finished her bow. "I don't know." "Then wait." Naruto reached out and grabbed her arm before she could take one more step. She snapped back to glare at him, and he just took it in stride. "Can you please tell me you have a plan? Somewhere to stay for, I don't know how long, but until whatever this is can be resolved." "It won't," was Blake's knee-jerk response, but she was able to keep quiet because she knew it would only freak him out if she said that. She pulled her arm out of his grip inside. "I don't have a place, but I'll find somewhere. I always do." If you do, can you find me a place too?" The two students looked over in surprise to see the blonde monkey hanging from a branch with a sheepish grin. "You! son?" They looked at each other in surprise as the third Faunus dropped down from the tree to greet them. "Yeah, sorry about that. I came up here because I really wanted to see Beacon, and then I realized I still have nowhere to stay, and then I accidentally saw that cute little scene you two had over by the statue." Blake groaned and Naruto palmed his face. He slowly dragged it down, stretching out his whiskers before looking at Sun dryly. "Why don't you rent a hotel or something? Funny you should mention that." And Sun laughed innocently. "So I took your advice and tried out all those food places, and they were all delicious, but I ended up spending most of the lien I bought for this trip, so I can't get a hotel." The two Beacon students shared an unamused look before Blake commented, "You really shouldn't be allowed anywhere by yourself." "Yeah, I'm realizing that actually." Blake sighed and started back down the path. "Well, I can't offer you anywhere to stay. I don't know where I'm going either." "Hold on." Blake stopped and looked back at Naruto, whose face was twisted in irritation. He seemed to mull something over before, with a sigh, he looked between the two. I have somewhere you can stay." "Hunting." He flipped the switch as the room was illuminated by a faint, flickering set of lights. The room, by every kind of definition, was in poor shape. The two couches had tears and holes all over them, and positioned in front of the couches was a drawer with a system on top of it. They could spot only one bed in the whole room, and it was located in the corner, a spring and some stuffing sticking out of the side, and there was an unmistakable sound of something scurrying over the floor once they arrived. Naruto took a step in, his eyes heavy with having to see this place again. "Welcome to the hideout." "Oh," Sun sounded worried about the state of their temporary domicile as he faked excitement. Well, it's a nice place. Got that cozy, lived-in feeling. Definitely out of the ordinary, which is good. Stop." Now interrupted. "This place looks like crap because it is crap." "Oh, good. I was worried you thought this place was nice or something. I mean, if this piques your interest, what will your girlfriend think?" "I don't have a girlfriend." "So, she's not your girlfriend." "She's not my girlfriend, so you're single." Blake ignored Sun's attempt at flirting and stepped further in to look over the large room. It took up about 2, maybe 3 stories of an abandoned building in the agricultural district, but there was only stuff located on the ground level. Nobody would come looking because this was just one building and a group of others that were scheduled to be torn down, but never were, and supplied with energy from an independent generator that caused a ton of noise in the corner. She looked back at Naruto with a raised eyebrow as he answered curiosity. "This was the place me and Sasuke stayed while we were in Vel for that other business. We would stay here a few days at a time before we had to move again. It ain't perfect, but it'll do." "Nah, this is fine." Sun jumped in and landed with a hard thump on one of the couches. His voice went up a pitch. "That hurt way more than I thought, but I'm cool. You can take the bed in the back, and Sun and I will take the couches." Blake stared at him before he narrowed his eyes. "As long as there's a chance you might take off, I have to keep an eye on you until you can go back to Ruby and the others." She didn't argue or answer him. The black cat just silently turned around and walked over to the bed in the back. She watched her sit down and undo her ribbon before lying across the mattress. Whether she was actually trying to fall asleep or just brooding was lost on him. "Oh, sweet, you got a system?" The other tenant he had taken up was elated to see a drab little hideout had a game system to pass the time. One of the few things Naruto got to choose during the 2 years of thieving was buying the system so he and Sasuke could play it. He was glad to see it still worked. "Awesome, what games do we got?" Naruto pulled out his scroll and quickly started to type a message, an apology and a heads up to his team that he wouldn't be back yet and he had to take care of something important. This was Blake's endeavor, and while he knew she didn't want to contact her team at the moment, he didn't want his team to fret about him anymore, but he had to help Blake, help her come back to her team, and maybe if she could find an answer, he could find one too. "Hey Naruto," Sun called out as he waved his scroll in the air. "You wanna play versus? I'm wicked good in a fight." Naruto relented and strolled over to take the other couch. The two blondes started using their scrolls as controllers and cycled through the characters. Sun picked his and looked around the room once more before chuckling. "So, home sweet home, huh? No, this ain't home." End of chapter 41.